contents of this box are not of this world. They will guide you to that one, wherever and whatever that may be. Go then, Captain. Chart your course and your fate. I will say a prayer for the souls of your crew.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to A Casual Analysis, a series where we analyze gaming trends old and new. Today we are going to board the hype train and discuss Amazon's latest attempt to dominate a market they had no prior experience with. We are going to be discussing the new MMORPG New World, and try to understand why it achieved the immediate popularity that it did. And boy, is it popular. At the time of writing this script, the game is holding a concurrent player base of about 550,000, with a peak player base of 913,000. Just for reference, 913,000 is the fourth highest concurrent player base ever recorded on Steam. New World released on September 28, 2021, and immediately broke the gaming landscape with its popularity. Leading up to its release were reviews of betas, content creators and popular streamers covering it extensively, and so many ads. If you or someone you love has been affected by the amount of New World hype and advertising, you may be entitled to Amazon not giving a shit and eating your tear-stained money for breakfast. But hopefully you will be consoled in understanding exactly what happened to make New World so popular, as that is what I'm offering to you now. Why do people love this game so much? What contributed to its unreal amount of hype? What makes Amazon so special of a company that they can succeed in one of the most difficult gaming genres in the marketplace today? Well, sit back and strap in, because I'm about to explain to you the perfect storm that led to the success of New World. Before we analyze the current state of things, let's first understand some background. For those of you familiar with the MMO genre, feel free to skip ahead. New World is an MMO RPG, or a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. This means a player is at all times logged into an online world that other players can access as well. MMOs are usually centered around social interaction or group gameplay, sometimes having hundreds of players in the same place at the same time. A very popular example of this is World of Warcraft. In World of Warcraft, I create a character that represents me, and the game gives me a set of tools in which to interact with the world. That is the RPG part. The game then leads me on a journey into a world that thousands of other players are living in as well. Each player on their own journey within the same world. That is the MMO part. New World functions the same way. MMOs are popular because they have defining elements that make them extremely satisfying to play for long periods of time. Most successful MMOs will have these elements and put some sort of spin on it to make it their own. I'll quickly go through a couple of them. First, we have role-playing, the ability to assume the role of a character to then fulfill some sort of goal, whether it to be fantasy or just different from their normal persona. Next, we have stat building, the ability for a player to perform activities within the game to then grow their character's skill to perform more difficult tasks. Then social character building, the ability for a player to build a single character and create a narrative for themselves that they then share with friends or other players. Finally, we have world or group content, the ability to group up with other players within the world to interact and accomplish a shared goal. These are not the only elements of MMORPGs that players love, but they are some of the most common that are shared throughout the genre. There is a psychological reason, of course, that each of these factors drive a player's brain to release happy chemicals, but we will get into that in a different video. For now, understand that MMORPGs are created with social interaction in mind. This, in turn, creates player retention and longevity for the game. MMOs are considered forever games, meaning that a player will most likely stick to whatever MMO they connect with and then never leave, or at least play that game for a very long time. Let's go back to our example of World of Warcraft, which came out in 2004. Many people that played World of Warcraft in those early days made memories with their friends or established some sort of connection with the game early on. When presented with other options, these players were then faced with the choice of leaving their home and community in World of Warcraft to start all over again in unfamiliar territory. Most people, faced with the choice of being comfortable or being uncomfortable, will stick to what they know and love and be comfortable. Players would stay with World of Warcraft throughout the years and actually come to dislike other games, specifically because they were so used to the formula and lifestyle that was World of Warcraft. This solid player retention then fueled the game to become the giant that it is today. And even in the face of so many issues, that player retention is the reason why World of Warcraft only recently lost its title as being the king of the MMO genre. It didn't matter what quality of content World of Warcraft put out over the years, as long as it allowed for players to continue creating memories within the world it had built, the game would live on. Now that we have established that MMORPGs are mostly social games with character progression, let's discuss the market today and how New World fits in it. MMOs are still widely popular games. They may not be the most profitable, but they definitely have the longest lifetime. All you have to do is take a look at the top 5 most played MMOs in the market today. Leaving out New World, we have Final Fantasy XIV, Old School RuneScape, World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2, and Elder Scrolls Online. Out of these titles, the most recently launched was Elder Scrolls Online all the way back in 2014. This to illustrate the point that the majority of successful MMORPGs are one that have a formula that works. Players will keep coming back and logging in every day as long as they connect with that formula and share their experiences with other like-minded players. However, having a formula that works doesn't mean you can stop putting out content. Each of these games continues to try to iterate upon itself so the game doesn't become stale. Expansions are a staple in the MMORPG genre, and each of these MMO giants have plenty of them. Expansions bring new content, new worlds, and new gameplay that your created character can take part in and feel a part of. This creates a sense of continuous immersion for a player. The character they identified with back in 2004 is the same character they are playing in 2021, many expansions later. The player can say that their character, and therefore themselves, have lived through these events and have taken part in the history of the world that was created for them. Now, why do I bring this all up when talking about the current state of the MMORPG market? Well, it's because of a term that I mentioned before: player retention. The MMO lives and dies on its player base, and if a game seems to be extremely popular and have a large player base, it'll most likely attract more players. However, if a game has a small player base and the population seems to be declining, then it won't attract anyone new. This technically could be true for any game, but it gets worse for MMOs because of how important social interaction is for these games. For MMOs, even the perception of losing players will cause the game to drop in population. If people think a game is dying, they won't play it, because they don't want to play a game where they can't take part in that social interaction. But if new people don't play the game, then the current players won't have any new people coming in to play with, and eventually they will leave too. It's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy that can be set by the narrative of media outlets or the general internet itself. If the internet says your game is dying, then your game will probably die. And this is what happened in the MMO landscape. A perfect storm that allowed for a new game backed by a well-known company to break onto the scene. New World made its debut into a crashing MMO population. When I say crashing MMO population, I don't mean that MMO players weren't playing MMOs. Rather, they were looking for a new home. And one of the big reasons so many players were left without a home was because World of Warcraft, the king of MMOs for almost 2 decades, had taken a huge hit to its player base. At the end of 2020, a new World of Warcraft expansion, Shadowlands, was launched. The expansion had actually begun better than players thought it would. WoW players had long asked for a return to form so that they could feel excited to play the game once again. Shadowlands had a certain promise to it, but that promise only lasted as long as the content was new. Once players had done everything they wanted to do, they were left asking for more. The raid was good, and the PvP was better than it had been, but players soon found that the expansion had left much to be desired. It seems that WoW had spent more time developing ways to keep players mindlessly engaged rather than having any sort of fun. There was a base of good ideas, a promise of new hope, but the WoW team hadn't completed any of them. Instead, players were left with the same bad taste in their mouth from the previous couple of expansions. I'm not going to go into complete detail on the state of World of Warcraft. That is a long discussion and requires so much more background that will warrant its own video, and this video would definitely be long enough. But, in a nutshell, World of Warcraft made one too many mistakes. The game had been on the edge of collapse for a long time, only holding on by the pure love of its player base, but this time it wasn't enough. There were too many other options for WoW players to choose from, and those options did not treat their players like sentient moneybags. It took about 9 months, but over the course of the Shadowlands expansion, World of Warcraft had a mass exodus. The players had enough, and were taking to the internet to express their concern. Content creators that had been covering the game for years were now posting videos saying they were no longer going to be solely pushing content about World of Warcraft. Longtime players were not only leaving the game, but finding other MMOs much more entertaining and bringing along their friends. For the first time in the game's history, it was more popular to hate WoW than it was to play it. And as I mentioned before, MMOs live and die by their player base. WoW having a perception of a dying, unappealing game led to a significant drop in population, the likes of which the MMO genre had not seen since its launch in 2004. A defining moment in this exodus came when longtime hardcore WoW content creator and streamer Asmongold started to play Final Fantasy XIV with his viewers. He was not only playing a game other than his beloved World of Warcraft, but he was enjoying it. A game with anime waifus and small, fat, child-looking gnomes didn't matter. Final Fantasy XIV is a well-made game that respects its players and has many similarities to the formula of World of Warcraft. The best part, of course, was the fact that the game had a free trial packed with hours upon hours of content. So what did all of Asmongold's fans do? They dropped World of Warcraft and picked up Final Fantasy XIV. This was only made worse by the fact that World of Warcraft developers then started to get angry and defensive and call Asmongold names, very publicly. It garnered extreme attention and was covered by multiple sources. The developers had created more ill will for themselves by acting as if the only reason that Asmongold plays video games is to suck on the proverbial nads of the World of Warcraft team. It added more and more disdain for the company that created the game when thousands of people already had their foot out the door. So it happened. World of Warcraft was losing players rapidly. This left hundreds of thousands of MMO players without a home. Fortunately, because the veil had been lifted on the eyes of these refugees, other MMOs received extreme boosts to their population, Final Fantasy XIV noticeably getting the most attention. It was in this turbulent marketplace that Amazon's first attempt at an MMO would begin its ascension into the spotlight.